Welcome to another exciting episode of Digital Data Podcast. I'm your host, Cecilia Maundu. I'm a broadcast journalist, a digital security expert. I work at the intersection of technology, human rights, and journalism, and I am an African Union Media Fellow. Today's episode, we are exploring the exciting intersection of digital identities, innovation, and economic growth in Tanzania. As the African Union drives its digital transformation agenda, digital IDs are emerging as a key enabler of connected, efficient, and secure Africa. We will also delve into how these advancements are supporting the Africa continental free trade area, boosting trade and opening new opportunities for businesses and citizens alike. Join us as we unpack how Tanzania is positioning itself at the forefront of this digital revolution, shaping the future of Africa's integration and economic success. This podcast episode has been made possible by the African Union Media Fellowship, which is implemented by the African Union through the Information and Communication Directorate, supported by GIZ on behalf of the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development. Welcome to the show, and I'll give this opportunity to our guest to introduce herself.
My name is Jane Mary Ruhundwa, and I am the founder and executive director of Dignity Kwanza. Dignity Kwanza is an NGO that works to safeguard and promote human dignity of people affected by displacement and people at risk of statelessness, women and children here in Tanzania. So we work in Tanzania. We are a national NGO in Tanzania.
I've been doing several interviews, and you're the first lady in this space of digital ID that I've been able to interview. So it's a very encouraging. Yes.
That's good to know.
So I'll go to the first question. How has Tanzania's approach to digital identification evolved over the years, and what are some of the key milestones in this journey?
Yeah, thank you. Within the region, meaning the East African region, Tanzania is probably one of the countries that rolled out digital ID later compared to others like Uganda and Kenya. For example, our National Identification Authority, NIDA, was established in 2012. And I think late 2012 or 2013, that's when people started getting the digital IDs that we have right now. So if you see 2012 until now, it's like 12, 13 years of having these digital IDs. So we're pretty new in this. And since then, the key milestones that we're seeing as a country have been consistent in ensuring that as many people as possible are getting these digital IDs. Until now, I think over 24 million individuals are already registered, and about 20 million IDs have already been shared. So it's a good number to start with, but there have been campaigns to ensure that as many people as possible are getting these IDs. Another very important milestone also, because for one to obtain these digital IDs, they have to have birth certificates, and the birth registration were very low at the time when the digital ID was rolled out. So the campaigns for universal birth registration went hand in hand with this, and that has also helped for many people to be able to obtain this digital IDs.
How has been the reception on registration of this digital ID? I'm asking from the point of, in Kenya, it's been met with resistance, especially from digital rights activists who are talking about the issue of data protection, because we have the Kenya data protection law. Also, there's been question on the issue of marginalized communities, some of the communities that you work with currently. So how has been the reception?
So generally here, the reception has been positive. And this is for two reasons. One, I think it is something that was long waited by Tanzanians. It was really hard for us to prove our identity, even within. So we would use driving license, voters' IDs, passports, and so on and so forth. And the idea of having this digital ID was a positive one, because the way it has been presented is that this is eventually going to remove the need of having all these multiple IDs. So that is one reason why it has been received positively. And the second reason is we don't have these kind of activists here in Tanzania. Our civil society space is not that much developed. So these other technical issues, there are no people to speak on them, if I can say that. So that's why we don't have those kind of resistances. So basically, it is something that has been well received. Of course, it has come with a lot of challenges, but these challenges are not from the point of people's resistance. It is just sort of structural and historical factors that are posing challenges, but not really active resistance from people.
Allow me to ask, Jen, you talked about you don't have like digital rights activists.
Mm-hmm.
From my point of view, that's a bit worrying because I mean, our lives have moved digitally. And also I know Tanzania's civil space is shrinking, well, across the world, but some countries are more than others. So what do you attribute to lack of digital rights activists?
One, I think it's, as I'm saying, this is kind of a new thing. It has been recently introduced a decade or so ago. And the way it has been presented is like it's a positive move. I'm not saying that people are not speaking on the issues of data protection. They do, but they're not actively speaking about it. I think we have left it in the hands of the government to take all precautions. We have the law on data protection, and we are the place where we've just left it that way. People are speaking but are not that actively speaking. Could be maybe there's so many other issues to speak on about people's rights, and this is one has not gained the momentum that much.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah.
Now, moving to my next question. How do you see these digital identification systems improving the lives of Tanzanians, especially in rural areas or undeserved communities?
So for me, I look at it as a necessity of life, as a right as well, especially because I'm working in areas where I do work with people who don't have any kind of identity documents most of the times because they have moved. They've been forced to flee. They didn't carry any of their IDs. And I've seen how they're struggling. But I'm also working with these communities at the border that mostly are the risk of statelessness because, again, they're not able to offer concrete proof of their identity. Most of the time being told that they're citizens of the neighboring countries rather than Tanzanians. And I've seen the suffering they're going through. So to me, I believe that once we have reached a point where everyone who qualifies or deserves to have a digital ID has it, it's going to improve their lives very well. Especially one, because now they will surely and with confidence know and prove their identity. And then this is going to be tied with many other services. So it will be easy for them to access all other services. It simplifies processes. It enhances trust, especially in rural areas. We're seeing the increase of mobile money transactions, which really needs these kinds of IDs because otherwise many people who don't have IDs would use other people's IDs to register their mobile phones, their SIM cards, and then so many other challenges come when they have to send and receive money and so on and so forth. So to me, I am seeing this improving people's lives because as I was the example I gave, receiving, sending money, doing businesses online, even cross-border movement and businesses.
That is if it's implemented correctly. Now over to my next question. How does the digital ID system in Tanzania align with the goals of the Africa Free Continental Trade, particularly in terms of facilitating cross-border trade? And you mentioned a bit, reducing barriers to businesses and enhancing regulatory transparency.
Just looking at experiences I'm seeing, we have reached a point now that we can use our IDs to cross to nearby countries. And that's already a very positive step towards facilitating these cross-border movements because my country, Tanzania, is bordering about 8 countries. And apart from like big businesses where you would have to go and register a company in another country or a branch of your company and all that, we have these people living at the border who goes and come back and they trade on daily basis. So with this kind of a digital ID really simplifies that because now the movement and the business cross-border is becoming much easier. I'm imagining it also simplifies processes. Now you don't have to show so many documents to be able to trade in the other country. I mentioned financial transactions. It's easier to send and receive money if you have these digital IDs and so on and so forth. So that's how I am seeing that.
Thank you for that. That's a very well answered question.
Thank you.
Moving on, the African Union has been advocating for a single digital market across Africa. How does Tanzania's digital ID contribute to this vision, and what role does it play in fostering regional collaboration? How does this digital ID foster regional cooperation?
As I'm saying, we joined very late in terms of our people having national IDs. So we were left out altogether. So by 13 years ago, we wouldn't be in a position to talk about single digital market because we didn't even have the digital IDs by then. Since we have adopted that, and since I'm seeing all these efforts being made to make sure that we are at a place where everyone has these digital IDs, I am seeing that we are already contributing to this vision for a single digital market across Africa. Because once our people are able to participate in the market in cross-border business and trade, we're already contributing. So I'm really seeing this as a positive move for my country. And speaking from where I am seeing how the government is really pushing for everyone to have these IDs. So from that, I see that we're really contributing to that vision.
As you said earlier, this issue of digital ID has a lot of benefits to it. However, we put a disclaimer to it unless it is implemented correctly, because we know implementation is king. So moving to my next question. Everything at the beginning has teething problems. What are some of the challenges that you have encountered when it comes to the issue of digital IDs in Tanzania?
So the challenge that I am seeing have been, one, there are challenges in identifying people who should get these digital IDs, in the sense of, I shared before, we're bordering many countries. There's a lot of irregular movement, irregular migration. So there have been a challenge, especially in border regions, on deciding who is really a Tanzanian and has to get a digital ID as a Tanzanian, because we have three groups of people who can receive these IDs. We have citizens, we have foreigners, and we have refugees. On border regions, we have an issue of identifying citizens, because many people fail to prove they're citizens, not because they are not, but because they don't have any other document to prove that. And that goes hand in hand with awareness is another challenge. People in rural areas have been moving without holding any ID. Even the ones that I mentioned, the driving license, the voter's ID, they have survived without them. They don't need to travel, so they don't have passports. So when you're coming in and telling them that you must get this digital ID, and without it, you're not going to register your child in school, without it, you're not able to do this and that, it's a bit difficult. But that also is more challenging, because in as much as we have all these campaigns, but we have not been able to reach everyone in the remotest parts of the country. So there are people who still need to go up to the district level to be able to get their digital IDs, and they find it unnecessary because, again, they are not yet to see the advantages of these digital IDs. The multiple identification systems that we have been holding before is also a challenge, because now it brings a problem of names. So you have these names in your driving license, you have these names in your passport, you have these names in your voter's card. And then at the end of the day, who are you? Many people don't have birth certificates. So these are the challenges that I am seeing from this side where I work. I am sure there are other challenges like costs. Of course, cost on the side of people, the cost is very minimal, but the minimal cost for me is not minimal cost for my grandmother in the village.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's another challenge. But on the side of the government, I know as we're engaging with them in our advocacy work, they talk about issues of security that again come from that angle of being able to identify who are citizens, but also making sure that they decentralize these services to everyone is also costly, and so on and so forth. So those are some of the challenges. Another challenge is, I think it goes back to the identification challenge of identifying people. There are also a number of people who are falsely getting these IDs, which is going to be challenging in the area of safety and security.
Earlier on in our conversation, you touched on the issue of affordability, which is very key. There's also another very key issue, which is internet accessibility. And we are aware that the majority of our population in Africa lives in the rural areas. What are some of the tangible things that government can do when it comes to the issue of internet accessibility? Because for the success of this digital ID, there must be internet accessibility. And we are not only talking about internet accessibility, we are talking about meaningful accessibility?
That's an area that really for us to be able to move and for these digital IDs to be meaningful, that's an area that the government need to invest more. Not necessarily the government might facilitate and private sector would invest more. Currently, most parts of the country have access to internet, not so good compared to like big cities and towns. You can go for like 2 kilometers without being able to access internet connectivity, regardless of the quality. So we're moving towards that. The biggest challenge has been the cost. The cost for internet. So accessibility in terms of connectivity, I see the private companies, phone companies are really doing a good job in reaching the remotest parts, trying to improve the quality of the connection and all that, but it's still expensive. Internet is still expensive in Tanzania. In big cities like Dar es Salaam, they have started fiber. Now we can access Wi-Fi in our offices in homes at a much, much cheaper price, but then it's just in cities. So when you were talking about rural, remote areas, it's an area where the government really needs to invest on and encourage private sector to invest on, and also make sure that they're cutting down the cost for it to be accessible by everyone. And on the internet literacy is key. From working with the community, I'm seeing people, yes, have access to internet, but what they are doing with that access to internet, what they are putting in the internet, coming back to to data protection and privacy, what they are putting on internet and all that, really, it's very important to educate our people on this as well.
It's true, so that we can make sure that we are not leaving anyone behind. It doesn't
Definitely.
It's up of the few.
Yes.
So as we come to the tail end of this conversation, in what ways does the African Union strategy for digital transformation play a role in implementation of digital IDs in Tanzania and other African countries?
Because now it's an AU strategy and members have to work on recommendations that are given. I'm seeing that it's calling for members to ensure inclusion, security, privacy, and data ownership in digital identity systems. So, and this is where I'm coming back saying that we are trusting our government. We think the government will do whatever it needs to do to make sure that we are protected as we are enrolling in this digital ID. So these kind of recommendations that countries have to adhere to, I think they really are key in informing our digital ID systems in Tanzania. States are called to make sure that the digital identity systems are inclusive and also for interests of Africa's citizens. So these kind of recommendations, I think it's a reminder as we continue to develop, as we continue to campaign for digital IDs, these are to be back at the back of the minds of the decision makers. Maybe this is where NGO, civil society has to come in to make sure that they're actually being followed.
You said it very well that we need different stakeholders for this digital ID ecosystem to work. And we also need the issue of public-private partnership, because governments can't do it all. But also there is something I would want to say. When it comes to the issue of public-private partnership, we have to know these stakeholders that we are bringing on board. What are their interests? Because you might bring a stakeholder on board while their interest is be able to harvest people's data. We know we are living in the tech world right now, and most of these tech companies, their business model is selling our data to advertisers. So we also have to be very cautious, or rather governments have to be very cautious on who they bring on board. So is there something that is burning that you feel that you need to say before we bring this to a close?
My general opinion, this is a positive step if done correctly, as we have agreed already. From the work I do, I'm seeing many people suffering through these processes. The people I just mentioned, the people at the border, regions, people being thrown into risk of statelessness just because we are moving towards this and they cannot show enough proof that they are Tanzanians. So my general point is, as we're looking at everything else, data protection, privacy, the positive aspects of the digital ID, I'm calling for the processes, especially where there are challenges. We're saying it has to be inclusive, yes. So where we are getting challenges, making sure that everyone is included, we need to make sure that we're resolving those challenges in a manner that does not deprive people of their rights. rights. I've seen people losing their jobs. Actually, I was a lead attorney in a landmark case of right to a nationality before the African Court of Human and People's Rights, where my client was just told that he's not a Tanzanian, he's a Kenyan. Just by being told, was deported to Kenya, where he couldn't show any proof that he's a Kenyan. And all the documentation he had before didn't really help him. And he suffered for many years until when he had to go somewhere else, settled as a refugee. But I've seen his life, how he has suffered through this life. And this is just one example. And it's because of the issues of identity. But for sure, where the challenges are first are being resolved. Because in my head, I'm saying if there were reasons to believe that this person was a Kenyan and not a Tanzanian, steps should have been taken to engage with Kenya as a country, as a government, to confirm that this person is a Kenyan and to make sure if any decision is being made of him being repatriated to Kenya, is done in a manner that where he goes in Kenya, he's safe and is accepted as a citizen of Kenya. But this was not done. He suffered, his children suffered, his business collapsed, and so on and so forth. And this is just one example. The problem of these issues, they face individuals. So most of the times they cannot be brought forward as a group because someone is facing these issues on his own, alone, and he finds his means on his own. But many people are facing these challenges quietly without coming forward, and it's hard to address them in general. I also call upon them to make sure that any issues encountered in identifying its people are handled in a manner that doesn't cause further infringement of rights of the people.
Thank you so much, Jen. You have really articulated that so well. And it is my hope that as this issue of digital ID continues to be implemented across Africa, some of these issues will be taken into consideration very seriously, like the issue of marginalized community. Thank you so much for making the time for this interview. Thank you so much for such an engaging conversation, and I'm sure our listeners have learned so much, and we await to see as this issue of digital ID continues to evolve. And we are hoping the next time we are having conversation, some of the things that we have mentioned here will have been taken care of. So asante sana. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Cecilia. I appreciate the opportunity, and also I really, really appreciate your flexibility.